Good morning, midday, afternoon, or if you're on the other side of the international date line, good Thursday to you. This is Kevin Dirks with Therap. I'm welcoming you and looking forward to sharing some new applications of some concepts that have been developed and continually evolving, both in Therap and with APSE. So again, thank you for joining us. This is our webinar format. You will be muted throughout this. However, you can ask questions by typing them in the question box there. We will be keeping an eye on those and doing our best to address all of them. We have a tight window. We're going to give you a bunch of content, so if we can't directly address them during this presentation, we will follow up with you and get you those answers. This is going to be Therap and APSE collaboration measuring organizational performance in Therap against APSE universal employment competencies. So again, we're going to try to leave you with some concepts. You will not become an expert in how to do exactly what we're going to show you here today, but we will show you how you can get enough information that you can be. So we're going to cover a little bit of the universal employment competencies. You're going to learn a little bit about how Therap works, and you're going to learn a little bit of how you can put those together and use Therap's data engines to evaluate and continue to evolve and improve your staff and your organization's performance around those nice, clear, established competencies, and compare those to the outcomes that you're getting for the people you're supporting. So big ideas, a lot of concepts. We're going to break it down and show you some different examples of that. All right, so again, I'm Kevin Dirks. We're going to do some introductions here. We're also going to turn on a little poll for you. So you're going to get a little pop-up. It's going to ask you some questions. If you wouldn't mind answering those questions as we go along, it's going to help us understand the audience a little better, see who we've got on here, and guide us that way as well. So I'm Kevin Dirks. I'm the Regional Director for Therap in the West. I've been with Therap for a little over 10 years, been in the field of developmental disabilities for just about 30 years. And one of my employment roles, one of my first jobs was an employment provider. And one of my initiatives that I was most proud of when I worked for the state was improving the state of Hawaii's employment outcomes systemically and looking at all aspects of that. So integrated employment has always been a passion of mine and something I've worked on, and I'm pleased to be working with APSE in this capacity collaboratively to continue this never-ending strive to get better. I'm going to introduce our other presenter here and not hog the mic anymore. I want to introduce Erica, who's going to be who's from APSE.
Yep, I'm Erica Bellis-Pacer. It's kind of hard to say my last name, so I was going to help you out there, Kevin. And I'm the Professional Development Director with National APSE. I'm really lucky with my job. I love it. My background is kind of diverse. I started out as a special education teacher and did that for a number of years. I also developed a lot of curriculum for high school students that were moving into work or transition age youth, different things they could start doing even in middle school. So I've had a variety of jobs. I did work at an agency for a number of years, and I ran trainings for providers and agencies that were doing competitive integrated employment. So I've collaborated with different state entities, and I love that I'm on a national level now. So I'm excited that we can talk about the updates with our competencies, and I will talk about that in a little bit. So I'll hand it over to you, Kevin.
Excellent. All right. Are folks seeing my screen? I also want to introduce a couple other of our team members as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Woodburn. I'm a training and implementation specialist with Therap Services. I work with providers across the country, specifically on rolling out the employment history module. I also work with our internal team on making developments to that module, working with different states and kind of seeing how they're utilizing and how employment's working in their state. I'm going to be in the background taking care of any questions that you guys have. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop those down into the chat box or into the questions box. And I'm also throwing out some other polls as we go along here today as well. Thanks for joining us.
All right.
I'm Stephen Flanagan. I am Assistant Director of Strategic Initiatives here at Therap. I've been here for a very long time. I will be assisting Katie and Kevin as well with those questions. And Kevin, to answer your question, we can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Good deal. Is everybody seeing? Are you seeing the Therap webpage up there? I'm never sure which monitor is showing.
Right now the poll is open, Kevin. So with the poll open, you don't see the screen.
No wonder I can do it. Thank you. That's what I needed to know. Cool. All right, good. So we'll continue on that poll, and then you'll see my screen here in a bit. One of the things I wanted to take a few minutes to tell you a little about. I'm gonna have how much longer do we have on the poll? I'd like to have Erica share some things with us and share her screen. And she's going to tell us a little bit about APSE. You may already know all about it, but if not, this is going to be a chance for you to learn a little bit about APSE, and then you'll find out how you can learn a lot more when you're interested.
Yeah, I have closed the current poll, so we are able to see the screen again.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to give that screen over to Erica. There we go.
Are you able to see it?
I think I just sent it to you. Yes.
Okay, sounds good. So we're good. We can see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so National APSE, it is the Association for People Supporting Employment First. I'm sure many of you have heard of us. I know that I used to do a lot with the New York chapter, and most states, as you can see on this calendar, have their own chapters. The national organization who I work for, we try to work with each state and try to provide support, professional development and ideas, and help with conferences and institutes that people might be having. So you can see on this slide that the blue are places where we have state chapters. We have been contacted by a few new states. I'm excited. Montana and Texas are hopefully going to be starting some new chapters, and you can see that there's over 3,000 members, and we're growing, every day. It's a nonprofit membership organization, and we're really there to help. I know that when I was a teacher, we had lots of professional organizations that provided support in terms of curriculum, assessments, all that kind of stuff. So I felt like there was definitely a need to have more of that within this field as well. You can see that there are 39 states, and the District of Columbia also has members. The members could be people with disabilities, it could be families, it could be disability professionals and businesses. I know in my past role, I really tried to get businesses involved because with competitive integrated employment, we need more collaboration. So APSE, and I'm sure if you're familiar with us, have heard all about our Employment First movement. We are the only national organization that's devoted to employment first. And with that, we really promote employment first through policy and advocacy, also professional development and sharing of best practices and tools. We recently in the spring hired a new person to work with advocacy and policy. Her name is Julie Christensen, and she is actually very busy working in DC. She is on the Hill meeting with representatives, senators, and trying to provide information and data in easy chunks for people to understand so that we can move forward in employment first. My role is, again, to provide trainings, webinars, information, and share different practices for this field as well. This is a map of states throughout the U.S. that are employment first states. Now that means a different thing in many different states, but you can see with the color code, the yellow means that there's legislation and executive orders that may have been put out. The green means there's legislation. Gray means that there's been a directive or an executive order put out. The blue means that there's something else going on. I know that New York is one of those states, and that's where I live. So the governor put out a statement encouraging employment first, and the black or grayish one is no activity. So as you can see, there's very few that have no movement towards an employment first. And if you're not familiar with employment first, what it means is, especially for transition youth or transition age youth, instead of perhaps when they exit high school going directly to a day hab program, they would go into some sort of employment first. Looking at employment as the first option for someone, instead of immediately thinking of a day hab program, a community hab program, or perhaps a sheltered workshop. So we also are working a lot with the states with closures of sheltered workshops and how you can move employment options into the community. So looks a little different for everyone. I like to say that we're not saying that everyone's job is going to look the same and you're going to work 40 hours. You try to look at the person and figure out what they want to do. So take a look at that. Now I'm going to move into the competencies. So when I came on board at National APSE, I realized that the competencies, the APSE competencies, had not been updated in almost 20 years. So the Professional Development Committee that I'm so lucky to have has members from across the country that are on the national board, and they are on this committee with me, and we broke them down into the different domains, and we really tried to update them with language that is used in the field currently and just updated information. They were great at the time when they were put out. Just like, you know, when people started with sheltered workshops, it was a nice idea at the time, but we've changed a lot over the years. I give the example, and this is from one of our members on the committee, that, you know, I had a really nice car in 1989, but I probably would not be driving the same car today. So you have to update with the way things changes. So what are competencies? Competency is defined is the ability to do something successfully and efficiently. These competencies are designed to guide the successful and efficient implementation of services. Both knowledge and skill sets are necessary for practitioners and funders to understand the various domains of supported employment. We also changed the name, so they're now called Universal Employment Competencies, and they represent the skills and standards of practice for providers of supported, customized, and self-employment services for all people with disabilities. This is defined a little bit more within the competencies that you can find on our website. Why do competencies matter? Try to talk a lot about that. And you can see in the middle, we have the employment consultant, and you can see we also have the employer and the job seeker. When I talked about the domains, we took a look at the domains that were there, and if you're familiar with them, you can refer back to them. But the first one was application of core values. So we took a look at that. And the roles and responsibilities for support professionals have changed over the years. If you are an employment support professional, and when I say employment support professional, I also mean it could be job coach or a job developer. Different people use different names. But in this case, you can see that if you are a support professional, at this point, you could be doing all these things. You're a teacher, you could be a nurse, you could be a psychologist. You have a lot of demands and things put on you as an employment support professional. What's changed in this section is originally it really focused on just supported employment, but with WIOA, we wanted to update it. So you can see that there's self-employment added to this section, customized employment, and of course, supported employment, which we like to really use the term competitive integrated employment. Domain 2 that we updated is really about discovery and assessment. So we looked at things that have shifted, and what shifted was that an increased focus on the process, and it includes how-to examples. So before it was much briefer, but we wanted to really give examples for people. We also put a much richer description of what would go into the profile and planning of a document. And we also included that, we really need to have an understanding of the impact of wages and benefits in this stage of discovery. So in our other competencies, we had at the end talking about benefits counseling, but we felt like that needed to be addressed much earlier. Why? We know and are more, we know what it takes to conduct a meaningful assessment for people that can lead to a detailed plan for job development. Also to those training and practicing and supervising. So I'll talk a little bit later just about how you can use the competencies in terms of professional development, onboarding, and also supervising. And the benefits of knowledge after the letter of Social Security arrives is too late. So you really need to have an understanding of what's going to happen with benefits earlier in the process. We also, with the language, it's more relatable and practical as opposed to clinical and service-like. So in the competencies, we use the term job seeker a lot instead of client or something that seemed a little more medical. These are just different questions that could be asked in the discovery process. And you can see here the competencies provide direction on how to gain information and how to compile it in a way that leads to a good plan for a job search. All of this needs to be known before you go to talk to an employer about a job. Okay, moving on to domain 3, which is all about job development. This is just an example. This is what we had in our old competencies. You can see it says uses very brief information. In the new one, we have it very specific. So you can see that it says assemble job seeker portfolios, including resumes, including visual and video resumes. Now that is something that was definitely not in the old competencies. Letters of introduction and references. We talked a lot about online applications, and you can see here use social media and electronic media. Again, that wasn't really a big thing back in 1989. It all works together. So not only are we trying to find jobs, we're looking at job skills, job seeking skills, and looking at career advancement using appropriate supports. Okay, the next one is domain 4, and this would be workplace supports. It's broken down into job acquisition, job analysis, worker orientation, workplace supports, adapting the job site, professionalism on the job, and retention. So what is shifted and why? We shifted it to on-the-job training and supports to workplace supports. Here, establish natural supports is now identify supports natural to the work site. In many cases, those supports could be beneficial for anyone working there. We changed this. It used to be identify artificial support. We said eliminate artificial supports. Use of assisted technology. We talked more about introducing and integrating assistive technology. Again, this is something that could be beneficial for anyone working on the site. This is one I really didn't like. It said a lot in the old competencies, appropriate social behavior. And instead of that, we thought we would have professionalism on the job because, you know, whether or not someone has a disability, not everyone is always professional on the job. The term stabilization was used a lot in the old ones. We like to use the term retention, just like other employees would use and other employers. Again, on-task behavior, that's not something that most employers would use when doing evaluations or talking with other people working there. So we put on-the-job performance. Okay, and the last one, domain 5, is ongoing supports. Talked about identifying sources for long-term ongoing supports, ongoing access to and management of benefits. Again, we added a lot here with options for people. From using community resources and support. So a lot of times there could be things in a person's community that could be beneficial. Collaboration for ongoing success and career advancement. Again, no matter who you are, you're probably not going to want to stay in the first job you get. My first job was working at a fruit stand, and you know, I had other goals and ideas of what I wanted to do in employment. So that should be the same for people with disabilities. They should have the opportunity for career advancement. Here's a little more on managing benefits for long-term success. What are the person's financial incentives and barriers to employment? What is the impact of work on an individual's benefits? Recognize, and this is the impairment-related work expenses. Has the individual been referred to work incentives and benefits assistance programs? These are all questions that we included in the competencies. And my last slide here before I hand it back over to Kevin, we are doing a much longer and in-depth webinar on the competencies and the reason for the change. So I just have that in there, but I'm sure you'll see it on our website. So Kevin, I'm good to hand it over to you, and I will interject and try to collaborate as you talk about how you took the universal competencies and put them in Therap. I am familiar with Therap. I did use it in a number of ways in my past job. I actually kind of customized it and made it work for us in my old job, and we included school districts, and we were able to put information in about districts. So kind of thinking outside of the box, and that's why I like that they were able to put the competencies in here, and they can be used as an evaluation tool for staff. You can use it for onboarding. So lots of different ways you can use those competencies.
Cool. Thanks, Erica. And as I mentioned, you're not gonna be an expert on all of this during this. We really want to show you how to blend it all, but as Erica mentioned, you could spend hours and hours getting smarter about the competencies and learning them, and I think you should. But we're not gonna do that today. One of the things I didn't realize that we had to choose either the polls or talking to you, and so the polls are important. So I'm gonna do a little background on Therap, but could we reopen the polls and give it like a few minutes for people to finish answering those questions? And then we'll come back, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Therap in the meantime. And then we'll come back and actually demonstrate some Therap stuff. So yeah, thank you for that transition. That was perfect. So what you can see here is these competencies are broad, cover a lot, and there's so many ways you could support your organization. You could pick one aspect of one part of these and spend months just getting better at how your organization does that one. So one of the challenges,
oh, sorry, Kevin.
Hello?
I was just going to say, yeah, it's Erica. Sorry. I was just going to say, when you look at the competencies, they do sort of build on each other. So the first one is really looking more at knowledge, and then it moves more towards skills. And I forgot to mention that before, but you're right. You could use it and really look in depth over a period of time.
Yeah, cool. No, perfect. And with Therap, you also mentioned, Erica mentioned how flexible it is. So I'm going to show you a way that I kind of dreamed up collectively here with the group on how you might address some of that. But really, you're going to see it's very flexible. I think you want to make some of this your own, but I hope kind of inspire you on that. So a little bit about what is Therap. Therap, we originally referred to ourselves and still do primarily as electronic documentation. Our goal first and foremost is to help gather all that information from the folks on the front lines who are working with individuals and organize that and give the whole organization the information it needs on going forward. Today we're going to talk just about documenting some notes around competencies, but the Therap system is very broad and very flexible, and that can cover everything from incidents and falls and unusual events to billing, making sure people are getting paid. So we're going to demonstrate just one part of that today around the employment competencies again. So I'm not expecting that you'll know everything about Therap as a result of this, but I think you'll see some of the flexibility and some of the creative ways that we can take competencies or standards and start to measure them and compare them across organization. All right, I think that was there's one more poll question possibly.
There is one more. I can run it at the end while we're wrapping up, if you want to start.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. All right, great. All right, I'm gonna become the presenter here. And we should be seeing my screen now on the Therap page. All right. So again, as I mentioned, we are a kind of a complete documentation system now, kind of really nuts to bolts, demographics, things like that. We are HIPAA compliant. We build the system. We maintain it. Again, I'm not going to cover a lot of the nuts and bolts of Therap today. We're going to spend most of the time just showing you one component here and doing a little bit of a dive into aggregate data. I actually had a really good time at the APSE National Conference, and one of the things that excites me is these emerging competencies, and still even the question of, how much of which, when, those kinds of things. And I think there's so much to learn and improve and be more efficient. And I think, and I'm going to show you how Therap can absolutely contribute to that moving picture and add some real hard measurable data to that. All right. So if you're seeing my screen here, I'm going to see if I'm logged in as my correct person. I'm going to start just at the end of this, more the individual, the staff out in the field, working with my job seeker, known as individual. If I come in here, click on that person's profile because they're on my caseload, I'm going to see a couple of notes here that we're going to talk about. And one is the sample service note. You have the ability to customize these. And this is my Get Rich Employment Agency, which is why we're all working. So staff in the field goes out, has an encounter, whether that's intake or on the job or job development. Come in here, identify the date, just a little functionality about how Therap works. I can backdate notes. It's going to keep track of when I'm doing them. We're going to go ahead and pop in a note for today. I mentioned we're billing system as well, so you can use this tool not only to gather some of this kind of large scale aggregate data, but really help the staff organize and report back on what they're working on. So I'm here at the job site today, and I have built a template here that gives the staff all of the domain information. I took a couple of very small liberties with it, but for the most part, I just cut and pasted this right in. You may or may not want to do it exactly like this, but one of the ideas here is that the staff have some reference material while they're out in the field or at their desk or in the office on what kinds of things they might be working on and how they might best use these competencies to support the individual. We've gone ahead and kind of chunked them into domains. And again, really just cut and pasting. You end up with a long note in this example. So again, as I mentioned, you customize these. I built this one this way. I also wanted to, some of the domains have a lot, and I wanted to show the ability to get some kind of sub information out of those. You actually could go even deeper here. I chunked them into domain 4A, B, and C. Again, this note is flexible, so you use it to get what you want and supports your staff. All right. So now I'm in the field. Maybe I'm doing an intake. Maybe I'm just meeting Indy for the first time, and I'm gonna say that, yeah, I worked on this skill. You also customize these drop downs, and you'll see there's quite a bit I can do here, or I can keep it simple. In this case, I wanted to show just a simple example of how staff can let me know, hey, I worked on domain 2, completed the intake initial meeting, and scheduled a follow-up team meeting. You don't have to know how to spell to do this, as I don't. All right. Domain 3, again, did I work on this? You see also I've got this set up as a shortcut, so I can say, you know what, we just didn't work on domain 3 during this hour. And I'm going to get some information about that as well. Maybe we filled out an application. Maybe we went and did some benefits check here. Applied for benefits check with aid. And Erica, feel free to add anything related here. But again, this is where that frontline staff is going to give you some information, and in this example, they can actually chunk it into the different domains that they were focusing on, and even have some reference material back on some of the things like, oh, I might also want to make sure I understand work culture rather than just focusing on Indy and what Indy needs. Maybe I'm also, this time, I'm going to not work with Indy, but I'm going to meet with co-workers and gather information on their interests and typical schedules and organization tools. All right. If I'm taking too many liberties, Erica will walk me back, but I think it's exactly this kind of information that really helps go, oh yeah, this is something I can be doing. This is where I'm at. That professionalism on the job becomes its own domain here, domain 4F.
It is tricky because
All
there
right.
are a lot of details in here, I know, Kevin, but there are certain domains and categories here that you may use more than others. So I don't know that you necessarily, it would be probably easier just to go to the certain ones that you typically use and type in stuff there.
All right. So I got the idea. Staff come in here, skip past it. I think I'm going to get some nice information to see how we're using and what domains we're spending more time with at what point in the process. We can do a broader note here: on site with Indy, spent time with Indy directly and the team. Again, you can write a lengthy support note here. Just side note, this is also going to be billable. So while staff do this simple note, kind of guided through the process, guided through the kinds of answers I want them to give me, and give them the ability to supplement and add more information, I'm also can be gathering billable information, staff time, involvement, and some aggregate data that we're going to get to here in just a second. Also, you configure this so that if there was some data like time in or time out that you wanted, you're gonna tell Therap, make sure that's there. Staff will get an error message if they leave something blank that you want. We also do manage all that service authorization information, and we can deal with both milestone and fee-for-service billing. All right, I'm gonna show you now another example, which I think lends itself even better to this process, and that is the supervision of the staff. So I'm going to click on Indy again, and now in this hat I'm wearing, I'm the supervisor. I'm the staff's support rather than Indy's direct support. And so one of the things I'm looking at is going out and getting those rare but super valuable on-site encounters out in the field, in the office, checking into meetings. And I'm going to want to start rating my staff and evaluating their performance against the competencies. So I have a separate note here that I'm going to fill out in that context. So again, same data tool. One of the things you'll note about this is I do need to sign off, and on the other note, I've already signed off on it. But anytime there's a new note or a new tool, I actually have to read through it, scroll down. I can speed through it, but I'm gonna, oh, sorry, wrong button. I do have to sign off on it. In this case, I'm gonna relook at it. I think I've already signed off on this one. Yeah, I will have to sign off on it. I can refer back to it here. But again, in this hat, I'm the supervisor doing an on-site observation of one of the staff and their interactions with Indy. So I'll say I was out there from 2:05 to 3:15. And I was again at the job site. And I'm going to note here, because Therap knows it's me filling it out, but I'm going to note here in the service provider who I was supervising. And I was supervising and observing Dave Does It, one of our coaches. Now in this case, same engine, same template. I'm going to show you just some different ways you can set this up. In this case, I don't have as much information here. Hopefully I am the supervisor. I am one of the experts in the UECs. So I'm going to just quickly monitor and report back during my hour on site there what I observed Dave demonstrate. And again, you can make your own scoring. I use something kind of familiar, consistently, usually, occasionally, rarely, or does not demonstrate this competency, or did not have an opportunity to observe. And I can put some notes in here around my observations. And in this case, I am evaluating Dave, but I'm evaluating also Dave specifically in his work with Indy. On community research, maybe Dave usually demonstrates this consistently. And again, maybe we didn't do job analysis, so I can leave that at no opportunity to observe. But I can come down through here and identify behaviors that I saw Dave demonstrate in working with Indy or did not see, and start to shape some ways I can better support Dave and my organization.
Can I ask a quick question?
Please.
I was just curious, is there a way for the employment support professional to do a self-evaluation in here on certain domains and categories?
Yeah, absolutely. There's really no limit. If you can define the question you want them to ask and the options you want them to choose from, then it can be built very quickly in here.
Thanks.
Yeah, and even on that, and that other note was kind of that idea. They're kind of self-reporting what they worked on, but they could also maybe be reporting how good they think or how often they think they use it. But in that note encounter, they're actually reporting what domains they're working on. I'm going to be able to see, how they're spending their time. Which domains are they kind of leaning on one or the other? And I can come back and compare that to where Indy's at in the process. So as you kind of mentioned, they build and there's that natural flow to them. So am I seeing that pattern? Are we stuck on assessment and spending too much time there? Or we're going to be able to get some information about that. All right. Before we pop over and look at the data, which I think is the frosting on the cake here, I just want to or just give a little information for agencies that do use Therap, how you can go grab these templates. I will actually be putting them into our global template library and sharing them. You can go search them up. I will probably use the UEC as a keyword. There'll be other keywords, but if you come in here and type UEC and hit search, I don't think I put them in there yet. Let's see. Yeah, you'll find those two templates I created. Again, I think they give you some stuff to chew on and some ideas here. But you can make those your own, absolutely. You can create your own templates here in the library. And again, so once you build out one of these notes as a template, you can use it over and over again. It can also be customized for each individual. So if you really want to emphasize one part of this, and this won't be the only data you collect. Again, as we look at organizations that use Therap and are aggressively kind of applying things like competencies, accreditation goals, and things like that, they're collecting all different kinds of data, and this would just be one example. But the staff side of that can be fairly simple. I mentioned that this can integrate into billing. It also integrates into something we call DDO, or data-driven outcomes. There is, again, I'm not going to teach you how to set all this up, but there is a bit of setup. I'm going to show you it as if it's just pure magic and all this data comes out, but you're going to do a little bit of thinking through this. The data-driven outcomes is really, and I think you'll see that we do whole webinars just on this subject. But in a nutshell, the data-driven outcomes is taking a large amount of diverse information about very unique individuals that we're supporting and funneling it for organizational purposes back into some comparable information. So it involves having some clear organizational measures. I know as an industry, we spent a ton of time getting better at writing measurable goals for individuals, and many of us have spent a lot of time on measurable goals for organizational performance. But if you don't have those, you want to spend some time thinking about them. The beauty of things like the employment competencies or other accreditation bodies is that they give us some really clear measurable objectives and start to give us something tangible, so we don't have to just make up our own measures. We can compare ourselves against a standard. And so one of the fun things when I saw the competencies was this is great. Somebody did the hard part and kind of categorized this, operationalized this, and now I can gather some data and compare my organization's performance against those standards. I don't have to make up my own standards. So there is an administrative side where you will define your measures. And again, I'm not going to go deep into that. I just want you to know you will do a little bit of mapping and defining. I've got like my universal supervision competency. I can actually map my domains here and match my scoring labels, and you'll see what that all means. But again, you will do a little bit of setup. It's an administrative setup. In the background, the staff are not seeing all of this, but this is happening. Where it all goes and where it starts to look like magic is our business intelligence engine. So again, you can control who can get in here and who has access and who can do things in different parts of the system. But this agency reports tab, if you've given me access as a staff, I can come over here to the business intelligence, and let's see if I'm in my right role here that I want to use for this.
And Kevin, I'm just going to add in that the universal competencies that APSE adjusted, they also align with the ACRE competencies for both supported employment and also with their customized employment. So we went through and made sure that they all align. They also align with the CESP exam that we have for certification. So the domains within the CESP exam also align with the competencies, which is nice if you're looking for ideas on study material.
Nice. I'm going to log into my supervisor dashboard here. So I've got it better set up to demonstrate here. So that was me as the staff. I'm using some second factor stuff to secure the data even better. So you can see I have a bit of a busier screen over here. I'm in my supervisor or administrator hat. I want to see how my programs are doing, how my operations are doing against those standards that we've embraced as an organization. So what I'm doing is opening up my business intelligence dashboard. For those of you that use Therap, you know that this Therap has its own dashboard over here. It's designed to tell me literally up to the last second or two what's happening across my organization based on my rolling caseload. The business intelligence is designed to sweep my entire history across my organization. It is it jumps you over to a separate set of servers. It's designed to crunch a large amount of data all at once. And for that reason, can sometimes take a little longer to open. It's not your hour by or your minute by minute side of the house. It is your aggregate data looking backwards here. And of course, things are grinding to a halt over here. So give it a second here and we'll get in there. We actually run this separately. Again, it's a separate set of servers. It's a snapshot of your data. So the business intelligence is not going to tell you what happened 5 minutes ago. It's really designed to look backwards at your trends and your big patterns and make big decisions about your organization and where you might intervene in your organization's performance as a whole. All right, so you see there's multiple dashboards here. I'm going to come in here and show my, I've got a couple of dashboards here related to the service note. And I'll give you some of the ways I can start to, and again, we're just going to start to manipulate and look at some of this data here. But I'm looking first at my my service note. So not that I have two dashboards I've set up here. One to look at the service note. You see I can start to define it by a program type, or if I just want to look at my employment programs, or just my employment programs on the west side of town or the east side of town. I can filter by date range, things like that. So here, just real quickly, as an organization, I can see my Get Rich Employment Agency spends about 30% of the time, or works on the domains about 30% of the time, and the domains are not applicable about 69% of the time. If I want to look at, and I don't have a ton of data in here. I did spend a lot of time putting in some information, but I can see I only have one ISP program that I'm pulling data from, but this could literally be hundreds. Which is why you'll see, what you don't really see in Therap is that spinning wheel that you do see here. Again, we're crunching a ton of data here. So here I can see, let's flip over to my one of my customizations. Here I can go look at it by individual. This is a different measure, and there's really no limit to how you organize the data that you're getting. And you find these feedback loops. Again, if I had more individual participants collected here, I could see how much of the time we're spending working on domains. The one that I think is most interesting in this service note is this one, the framework domain. So really, it's the question of how much, what domains are we working on, and how are we spending our time? And here I can see by my little breakdown of for A through G even. And if you like data numbers, you can look at it that way. If you prefer it as a stacked bar chart, you're going to be able to flip that around here. And again, I like this one. I can come back and compare this to where we're at in terms of the outcomes for individuals and their employment status and their point on the employment kind of career pathway, and see which domains we're spending most of our time on. And don't look for any real pattern here. This was a lot of me just entering some data. But I could also take this out to a PowerPoint, make a nice slide with this, and develop some trainings on it. I can also come in here and look by service provider. And compare my different staff and how they're doing, or how they're spending their time. All right, and now let's look more at the supervisor note here. So that was that second note I showed you, really designed for a supervisor. And you can see there's a lot of manipulation I can do right here. I can give myself some little shortcuts. So if there's ways I like to look at the data, I can come in here, play around with it, and save that and come back to it quickly. So here's that question of how are my different programs doing against the competencies? And again, don't look for any real data here, but 28.79% of the time in my fake agency, the staff in this program are consistently demonstrating the competencies. If I want to look at that, how are we doing across individuals? I can come in and compare. Oh, no, that's the old one. I'm going to switch over to my other dashboard. And again, you will see the same percentages here because it's just one individual in my example. But if I have more individuals, I could see, are we doing better with some individuals that we support versus others? framework domain here. Again, that same kind of view. And let's switch it over to looking at supervision observations. And I can actually see by domain how we're doing. And you like pie charts, you can do pie charts. I can see by domain where we're stronger, where I might intervene, where we're weaker, where I'm just not seeing staff demonstrate this, and go look and see, do we want to bring Erica in and do some training? Do we want, what's the right solution? And then of course, we want to see how we're doing by staff as well, and see if we see some patterns there. So we're going to refresh that. And I can see by staff how they're doing on this competencies, and by staff, by individual. In this case, individual. You also can get pretty statistical, add weights to different scores if you want to see bigger spikes. A lot of times with this kind of large data, when you start getting, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of data points in here, you'll start to see some very subtle variations. You can add weights to these and make the things you're looking for kind of spike up and find them in the pile here. All right, that is again a kind of a quick view of a whole lot of things you can do. You can take any aspect of those competencies. I think the real value that the competencies and Therap bring together is the competencies give you some very clear kind of measures and things to look at and compare your performance and know that you're measuring good stuff. Therap gives you the tool to measure that very flexibly. You can modify this. You can focus on things that are important to you. You can use your own organizational language and terminology, build these out as a template, and then you can use Therap's business intelligence engine and our DDO engine to compare and figure out your trends, your patterns, confirm that your agency is the best, and find ways to get better. All right, do we have, I think we have some time for some questions, hopefully, and we can maybe finish that poll.
We've got the final question for the poll up right now, and we actually don't have any other questions that have come through the chat box.
All right, well, we'll give it another minute or so, or 30 seconds or so. If you have to jump off, thank you. Our goal, our plan is always to post these as well. So it just depends on the recording if that all works out, but typically it does. These will be posted. If you want more information, about Therap or the DDO engine, you can contact us directly. You can reach out to any of the folks on here, or go through our Therap, either potential user or through our live help, and we'll get you on track to somebody who can answer your specific question. There's so many different ways you could come at this, so let us know what you're looking at or what kind of questions you have or what information would be helpful for you, and we will get you to the right person internally that will sit down and answer your questions directly. If you want
just to follow up on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We'll be sending out a follow-up email to everybody who registered for the for this webinar with some contact information if you want more information, as well as some links to those competencies in APSE and some of that information that Erica was sharing.
Yep, thanks. I was going to mention that too. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully you know a little bit more about APSE, you know a little bit more about Therap, and how you can put some of the work that we are doing individually and now collectively put that all together. So if you are not able to answer the question of how is my organization doing against universal employment competencies, you could. And I hope we've started that process. If you also know Therap, come to one of our conferences, particularly our national conference, and you will see the continuation of this this concept, and you'll stay at that front edge of that, because this is definitely something that will continue to evolve, and we'll see good examples from users like you folks on the webinar, where we'll all get smarter together. So I look forward to hearing what you guys are doing with this, and check back in with Therap and with APSE, and we'll tell you where we're at with the whole process as well. Did any other questions come in during that time?
No additional questions.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for your time. Thanks, Erica.
Yeah, no
Thanks,
problem.
Katie and Stephen. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully, the weather is nice where you're at, and keep doing the good work that you're all out there doing. And thank you for your time.